What's going on, digital wildcatters? Welcome to another week of Oil and Gas Startups Podcast. Got a great friend of mine on the show, and actually a show that I'm really excited about because I think this guy's one of the biggest movers in the Houston scene. So it's my friend Mush Khan at Alchemy Industrial. Dude, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction.
I know we were scheduled for like 2 months ago, and
I
was excited. I was excited to do the podcast. I woke up and I was like, man, I got this badass podcast, and then you didn't show up.
I know, yeah, exactly.
My feelings are hurt.
Were they? Are you okay now? Or
I'm
are you
okay
still
now. I'm okay now.
Working through it?
You're here now, so
we could hug it out if you want.
we gotta hug
okay,
it out.
Good. We can do a dance off.
Yeah,
maybe
that.
Yeah.
I don't think people want to see me dance. You know,
Me
I've
neither.
got the cliche white boy
Oh,
dance
do you?
moves.
Yeah.
So,
I kind of figured that.
yeah.
Well, the Indians are not really known for their dance moves
I
either.
don't know, man. I see some Indian weddings. You guys get after it.
But I was born and bred in England and America.
Oh, were you?
So, yeah. Yeah. How do you get that?
You're kind of like a white Indian. You got like the British culture.
Yeah, completely lost, culturally lost.
That's hilarious, man. So, dude, tell me, I've been out to y'all's. Y'all call it a lab? Like I call it a lab.
Yeah, it's kind of a lab. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Y'all build shit there. Like you're doing some really cool stuff there. So tell us what the company is and what y'all do.
For sure, yeah. So just a bit of the backstory. So we were founded about 2 years ago. So me and John Weinzerl with Catla Capital, who has a family office, sort of a low key family office. I can hear my 19-year-old cringing right now at my use of the term low key.
Yeah,
I probably used it wrong, didn't I? I think
I thought it was good.
Is it appropriate?
Yeah, it's appropriate usage. Yeah,
yeah. Alzim, if you're listening, that's for you, buddy. And so then also Andrew Malik, who's an engineer that you met when you were out there. So
yeah. Andrew's a great guy.
He's a great guy. He's a gifted engineer. I think the best manufacturing engineer that I've ever worked with.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy like you give him a red meat manufacturing problem to solve, and first reaction will probably grumble a little bit, and then you kind of walk away, give him a little space, and then you come back 24 hours later, and he's probably figured it out.
Yeah,
come up with an elegant solution.
That's an engineer's engineer. He's also a big car guy.
He's a big car guy.
So.
Yeah. And so, in fact, John with Catla is a big car guy too. One of his other investments, they're kind of co-located with us right now. A company called Revolution Paradox is an aftermarket car company. So they're building really incredible stuff. In fact, you should come back out and check it out. What they're doing is pretty amazing.
So I need to bring Jake out there too. Jake's a big car guy.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like none of this car stuff is in my blood. For me, it's like transportation. If it was invisible, like Wonder Woman's plane, I'd be fine with it. I don't care what it looks like.
I drive a Toyota Camry.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. Exactly. So we formed Alchemy. It's so interesting that interesting to us. We formed it just with sort of an idea that we knew that, or we thought that manufacturing would be reshoring into the United States. And so about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I spent some time working for a company who had its supply chain in China and Indonesia. So I spent a little bit of time there. And so I began to notice a few things when I was in China. I'm by no means a China expert, but one of the things I noticed was that each time I would go back, the labor rate was increasing, like literally month by month. Sometimes it would go up, and so I sort of began to pay attention to that. The other thing that I really started paying attention to was manufacturing technology, like 3D printing and robotics, AI, machine learning, like all the buzzword stuff that sounds cool, but is actually really hard to do.
Yeah.
That was becoming democratized. And so,
I think it's wild. You just walk into like Best Buy now and they've got 3D printers.
It's crazy,
there. I mean, the technology's.
And all of that, I think it's really about the user interface. So if you can make it more intuitive, then more people can use it.
Yeah.
And even engineers, like a lot of engineers cannot or will not code. So, maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe more recently, if you wanted to implement a robotic automation system in let's say in your machine shop, you probably needed to do a little bit of coding. And now these are kind of no or low code applications. So that was the second factor that we noticed was that manufacturing technology was democratizing. And then the third one, and I've talked about this a lot, that I believe there's a massive manufacturing wave that's building in the world. And so if you look at, the world has 6, 7, 800 million people who still burn biomass for fuel or for heating or whatever.
Yeah.
And so what happens when all of those people start consuming things like phones and, bicycles and washing machines, et cetera? The requirements to build are massive, like gargantuan, I think. So so we put all those factors into a bucket, and then you look at in the United States, especially Texas, energy costs are relatively low compared to the rest of the world. Manufacturing, one of the biggest cost inputs besides labor is energy. And so if you combine a favorable low energy environment with the fact that labor input is less of a competitive factor now because of Chinese labor rates going up and then automation taking labor out of manufactured products, then it really didn't make sense just to manufacture in places like China. And
that doesn't even take into consideration like agency risk
100%,
with, and just especially in today's world where there's a lot of conflict out there. And
for sure.
Okay, I want to dive into this because this is something that I've talked about on our podcast before, but I've never had a manufacturing expert here on the show. I have this thesis, and you and I have talked about this briefly, but this thesis that you're going to have a ton of onshore manufacturing over the next couple of decades, especially co-locating with energy assets.
100%.
Because you look, energy's upstream of everything, right? And it takes energy to build things. And you look at, especially countries like Mexico. Like I'm so bullish on Mexico because you have competitive rates in labor. You have access to energy. We have, and I'm no by means an expert on, NAFTA and our trade agreements that we have.
You're doing great so far, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But, literally you go Highway 59 and you get into Texas and you get goods and materials. And so this whole idea of manufacturing coming back to North America and really being driven by abundant, cheap, reliable energy. Those things are so intertwined that, manufacturing, supply chain, logistics are very much a part of the energy industry. And I think that Houston is extremely well positioned for that, given all the resources that we have here. So I want to dive into
I love
all
that.
of this.
Yeah. So you and I agree on that completely. And let's go a bit deeper on some of the things that you mentioned, Colin, because I think you're right on the. Either we're both right or both wrong. Yeah. So
we're both on the same page, regardless if it's right or wrong.
Right.
Let's talk about Houston real quick, because I want to talk about where y'all's where your lab, your facility is located, because it's part of this really cool space, Easton Makers Hub, which is on the east side of Houston. And I came to visit you there, and it was like 300,000 square feet or something, like crazy like that. Yeah, massive place. I don't even think that you and I, I think we were just like
walk through the hallways.
One little corner of the building. You're also on the board of it. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. So the East End Maker Hub is a development that was put together by two nonprofit groups. One is TXRX, which is a nonprofit maker space here in Houston, one of the biggest ones in the region, probably in the country now, and Up CDC. So both of those organizations put together the East End Maker Hub. So it's a real estate development. And because of its location, because it's in an opportunity zone, there's some advantages for investors to put money into that development. And so that strategy produced what is, as you mentioned, a 300,000 square foot space filled with manufacturing companies of different kinds, including Alchemy Industrial.
So is the idea like a co-working space
Yeah,
for manufacturing?
it's like a manufacturing kibbutz or something. Maybe that's it. People walking around with bare feet, So
do you have kombucha? And
we do, yeah. We do, yeah. Fridays are interesting there. I think there's some co-working elements to it, but what I've noticed is that the co-working is really organic. It's, we've done some business with people that have been in that space, and it's just you run into people in the hallway, you start chatting, and it just happens, which I think is, when I think about building community, it's very hard to build it top down, I think. Community kind of exists, and sometimes it needs a place to coalesce. Yeah. So the East End Maker Hub, like the work you're doing, I think is like that, Colin, because there is definitely a digital wildcatter community out there, but until you showed up, they didn't necessarily have a place to come.
Yeah. So you need a place for people to congregate. And if you look at our thesis for our events, our thesis is that if you can get a bunch of smart, forward-thinking people together in the
Right.
room, you have these collisions happen.
Sure.
And those collisions are the catalyst for ideas, collaboration, and opportunity.
100%. Yeah.
It's exactly what's happening there is that you just
Mhm.
have this talent and IQ density of
Yeah.
people in this building. And, you may be walking through a hallway and you run into someone or you need to know something specific. And you're like, hey, let me run down the hallway
Right.
and talk. And that's how innovation and ideas happen. And
That's
so,
true. Yeah.
places like this are super cool to me.
One thing I want to add to that is
Yeah.
that, yeah, I agree with what you just said. I also think that innovation like that doesn't have to be constrained to a physical space. I think that
Yeah.
Houston, circling back to the point you made earlier, Houston, I think, has a unique opportunity in this century to become the world's manufacturing leader. And I would say we are already the world's manufacturing leader because no one in the world, I would argue, knows how to make real stuff, put it on the back of a flatbed or on a barge or on a vessel and ship it all over the planet.
Yeah.
We're uniquely qualified. You look at the community of people who have figured out how to do that over multiple decades. It's pretty spectacular. And the figuring out is supply chains and humans and universities and other organizations like TXRX, and the list goes on. And so it's so deeply embedded within our culture, the idea of making stuff. Now, I would also argue that what we make has to change. And what we make has to meet the forward demands of the world. You said something earlier that I think is really important, that the energy infrastructure has to match sort of the new way of making. So I would argue that manufacturing on a global stage is becoming less concentrated. So one place won't be the factory of the world anymore.
Yeah.
And even within a country or even within a region, I would argue that manufacturing is atomizing. Again, some of this is driven by manufacturing technology. So you don't necessarily need to be big to feel big to your customers.
Yeah.
So a lot of technology allows you to do that. Like, look at your business. So 20 years ago, if you try to pull off digital wildcat, it would have been really difficult.
Think about, you start a media company, 20 years ago. I mean, you got to go try to start a network on cable TV.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah.
Now you look at the biggest media platform is Joe Rogan.
That's right.
And he started off with a podcast.
He did,
like this, and that's still all he is a podcast. And the barrier to entry is so low, and there's so many points of leverage that you can reach a worldwide audience with very little resources, right? And I think, I think it's such a cool time to be living.
It is.
And it doesn't matter if you're a content media company, if you're tech, if you're manufacturing, these points of leverage and the ability to build and have more of an impact with less resources is a super cool time.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And it's, we have sort of the power of kings now in our pockets, more than that.
Yeah.
Kings never had the power that we had on our phones, and so, and maybe it's too much power, but so manufacturing, I think what you just described about media, there is an analog to manufacturing too. The barriers to entry and the cost for entry are definitely higher because you have to buy stuff, equipment. But even, people are even beginning to innovate how you buy equipment and, hardware as a service and those kinds of things. So the market really is so brilliant in so many different ways, and it begins to figure things out. So I think Houston has an opportunity to really take advantage of it. And I think the principal thing that we have to continue to maintain is the respect for manufacturing talent. And that if anyone's listening to this outside of Houston, and you probably have like billions of people listening to your
podcast,
billions, billions even.
Literally like 2 billion.
2 billion, like all the billions are listening right now. That I think if you're a smart manufacturing person, come to Houston. There's plenty of stuff to do.
Yeah.
The list of problems is so long. And which to me, those are all businesses. You if you list 100 problems to solve, those are 100 businesses to build.
100%.
And so I would say we've got to win the war for talent. And I think in my experience, and this goes back to innovation, Colin, that you just talked about, friction is deadly to innovation.
Yeah.
And so I think the best talent wants to go where the ideas flow the easiest.
Yeah.
And definitely you need access to capital, you need access to customers and help, etc.
Yeah.
But it's ideas.
Yeah.
You cannot penalize people or punish people for coming up with ideas,
Yeah.
especially bad ones.
Yeah.
Because all the good ones are mixed in with all the bad ones. Like I'm living proof of that. Probably 80% of what I've ever come up with was, terrible.
It's very hard to differentiate between what's a good idea and what's a bad idea.
You don't know.
It's funny, like on content, I have the stuff that goes viral for me. I have no idea.
Nuts, right?
I have no idea what's going to go viral and what's not. And usually there's a strong correlation between the piece of content that took the least amount of effort goes viral. The one that I spent so much time, gets no views. And so it's the same thing with building businesses and ideas. You just never know.
You don't. You don't.
With Houston, I think that when you look at like the quote unquote clean tech, climate tech, whatever you want to call it, and this can take everything from wind, solar, hydrogen, whatever it may be, but there's been this kind of focus on places like Boston.
Yeah.
That, Boston's the hub for climate tech.
Whatever.
And it's like,
sorry, Boston.
No, sorry. Sure.
Yeah.
Great people.
We love
Boston.
you. I've been to Boston. It's a great city.
I've never been there.
Yeah.
So I don't have an opinion on it. But what I do know is that Boston is not a place that you make and build heavy infrastructure and hard physical tech. That happens here in Houston. Hey, you want to be involved in hydrogen, and I think that hydrogen is going to play a massive part in
looks like
manufacturing and building things. That happens here in Houston. You look at what we have with the ship channel and the size of our port and things that
it's nuts.
Just
someone's already paid for all that stuff.
Yeah,
and you get to use it.
You just look at it. Yeah. It's funny. I'm going to tell this story that's kind of like out in left field, but I just heard this story.
That's surprising you would do that.
Yeah. That's very out of character for me.
When do we start drinking? Is that might get might get a little more fun.
Yeah. And so I heard this story last week, but this guy in Houston, oil and gas, puts his entire life savings into developing this tool. I'm not going to say the tool because it'll dox who he is, but it's a very well-known tool in the oil and gas industry, and puts his life savings into one, coming up with the idea and then manufacturing it on his own dime. He makes one product and he sells it to a rig in India. Yeah. And he puts it on a boat here in Houston, sends it over there. It ends up getting stolen.
Oh my God.
They hire an assassin essentially to go hunt down the people that stole it, get it back.
That's commitment.
Now he's extremely wealthy because the tool turned out to be really great. But
my God.
I want to try to get him on a podcast to
come tell that story.
But for sure. But just the ability to build things here. I think what you said, removing the friction, I think Texas overall does that. That's why we have such a prosperous economy, is because we've removed so many restrictions and friction. When we talk about, I'd love to hear your take on this, because I have this whole thesis on the future of West Texas. I come from Midland, grew up in West Texas, and I look at manufacturing, and especially around things like the space industry and aerospace, things of that nature. West Texas is so power and energy dense from wind, solar, oil, natural gas. I mean, just a powerhouse, but also has a very technical workforce.
Yes.
Oil field hands, welders, engineers, things of that nature. And so I think that the future, you're going to see, you kind of talked about this, how you start seeing even in areas fractionalization.
For sure.
And it's not just like a central location, but I think West Texas actually has a bright future in the manufacturing industry, because you're going to start seeing these plants co-locating with energy assets.
I think that's true. And you mentioned Mexico. So I think that the dynamic you described is one that I agree with too. Yeah. And in fact, I think the data shows that direct labor costs, so like the unit labor cost of a human making something, that is now lower in Mexico than in China. And so
that's one thing I didn't even think about that until you brought it up a little bit earlier about the cost of labor in China's going up, and that was the whole value proposition in the first place. And so that's actually not something that I thought about. But So you're saying that in Mexico, it's actually hit that
Yeah. So think
inflection
about
point where it's
this,
getting cheaper.
this is related to sort of your West Texas thesis, which I agree with. There is, I think, a challenge with, just before I get to the addressing the thesis, I think there's a challenge with, let's take solar as an example. There's certainly, the sunlight is bathing West Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And at least today, the demand for power is east of there, so you have a transmission problem, I think. But on the Mexico dynamic, so let's take a look at that phone or this microphone that we're talking into. So every manufacturing product is made, it's really not one product, it's made up of a series of things. And if you look at it just through the labor lens only, there are things that are more labor intensive, usually assembly types of things that are hard to automate. Automation is actually very difficult, in my opinion, and the inclination is that people over automate, and then robots are dumb. They'll only do what we tell them to do, and they're not great with dexterity all the time and vision, which are two, I think, the two compelling business opportunities in robots. But so you take a product and you break it apart, so you can make the case that for things like assembly, pure assembly work, a lot of that's going to migrate to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
For perhaps the kind of the higher order manufacturing parts of things, a lot of that's going to stay in the U.S., particularly in Texas. So I can see if you drew, let's say, a 200-mile, 100-mile band, into Texas from the Mexico border, I think that's going to be a hot spot for manufacturing.
Yeah.
And you could probably do a little bit more work than I just did, but to think, okay, like, is it Monterrey or is it where in Mexico is it gonna win?
Yeah.
I think the place to look is like, where are the big guys already going?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that they are sort of plowing the field for the rest of us. Like
they're laying the foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think Flextronics recently, or a couple of years ago, located to Mexico. I can't remember where they went, but I would look at that and then say, okay, where is Flextronics? And where around them could you build manufacturing businesses that are focused on assembly? And so it's a really interesting dynamic. I think I'm as bullish as you are. I'm extraordinarily bullish for Houston. I'm a Houstonian. I've been here since 1990, which is probably like 10 years before you were born, or 100 years before you were born.
It was 1 year after I was born.
What?
I was born in 89.
What?
Yeah.
You're
Actually,
so old.
Barely. I was born in December 19th, 89. So.
Oh God, you are so old. But
I had a thought and I lost it.
Well, we were talking about labor in Mexico and
yes, So Veral Energy Solutions. I've been talking to them because I want to go create a piece of video content and go down to Mexico because they have this facility. I believe they have one in India as well, but they have one in Mexico, and they're the biggest manufacturer of tricone roller drill bits.
Oh, interesting.
And they manufacture not just for themselves, but some of the other big providers. And those are manufactured down in Mexico, and they employ 1,000 local people down there in Mexico. And so, there's already companies, even in the energy industry, that are vertically integrated in manufacturing down there.
Yeah.
And so I've actually been down to Guadalajara and visited some manufacturing plants for some product that I was trying to launch. Whole different story.
Yeah.
I need to talk to you about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I could just figure out the manufacturing piece, I think that it's a good product.
Yeah.
But I went down there and, I love the people in Mexico. They're extremely fucking hardworking. And just
I'm glad that we can swear.
Good people.
You broke the seal on that. That's awesome.
Dude, yeah.
I've been holding back.
What?
I don't know. I don't know how to be polite. I mean, I don't know what to do with my hands.
This is my podcast, dude.
Okay, good.
I cuss
Fuck
like
yeah.
a sailor.
All right, good. Yeah, thank you.
I brought down the tension in the room. That's so funny.
Exactly.
But speaking of that, you have a podcast, right?
I do. So we it's on hold right now because we want to launch season 3. So speaking of shitty first versions, so my first podcast is just a Zoom recording, and we released the audio. Had some great guests. I think we got up to 24, 25 episodes.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was
that's
my
a lot of work, dude.
It was. I didn't know honestly what kind of work it would be.
Yeah.
And I think the production quality is okay. But it's I really try to emphasize, number one, can I get good guests, and number two, I wanted to learn what's involved. Like, how do I do interviews? And you're great at this, and And so we launched it. It's called manufacturehouston.com. We haven't released in a while. In 2023, we want to launch season 3, but I want to step up the quality. In fact, you and I have talked about collaborating on it. We should definitely do something.
Need to work with Digital Wildcatters to do that. Let's do it right here on the show, man.
That's fucking A. We're in.
We just did a deal.
So here's what's funny about that, Colin, is that so I looked for the name not digital. Sorry, you already got that. manufacturehouston.com.
Yeah.
And it was available. That URL was available.
Yeah.
So first of all, I was excited because I registered it for like $19.
Yeah.
But secondly, I'm like, why on earth, how could this URL be available in like 2021? Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
Why didn't someone already take this?
Yeah.
But that also tells you, I think it speaks to a problem and an opportunity, which is, yes, there's a great Houston manufacturing community, but I don't think it's as organized as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I think there's an opportunity for someone, and it's going to be us, to sort of be that coalescing point like you built with Digital Wildcatters. And so the fact that it was easier to register means that
there's opportunity. Yeah, someone's not.
So that's the idea. I'd like to, I'll sort of just think out loud with you on Manufacture Houston. So I do think there's a continued opportunity to release podcasts. What I'm maybe equally even more so interested in, and I'd love to get your take on this, is that I want to tell stories of all the manufacturers in Houston, not just like the industrial guys.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people in Houston that make stuff. And that includes everything from great chefs to boot makers to upholstery, whatever. Because the data, I guess I'm gonna probably mess up this data, but I think Houston has one of the largest counts of manufacturing firms in the country.
Oh, really?
It's a very long tail manufacturing supply chain. I'd love to tell those stories and tell the stories of the entrepreneurs, because these are the people that are running a business, making enough money to pay the mortgage, buy food, etc. I think we should elevate them.
Manufacturing deals with all the same problems that the energy industry deals with in terms of storytelling, attracting talent.
Yeah.
There's another company out there called BuildWit that's very similar to Digital Wildcatters, except they're based around the dirt world and like building things.
Construction.
And which also has heavy overlap with energy. A lot of their content, they're in mines, they're out at solar plants, things of this nature. And they've had success, like we've had success, because people, you think, I always like to use this persona, a kid up in New York City.
Yeah.
He grows up in New York City. They didn't grow up like I grew up out in West Texas, where I'm exposed to the oil field, people building and doing things.
Just all around you.
Yeah. And so they don't have this medium to be exposed and learn about these things.
Right.
And what happens is, everyone knows about tech. They know about Google and Amazon and Silicon Valley. And that's like the only cool career path for them.
Yeah.
Because that's what they have exposure to. But you start building and telling stories of people that are in this industry and showing the cool shit that they're working on.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, you're getting exposure. It's funny. I was at this private meetup up in New York a couple months ago. It was like 20, 25 people, all, founders, CEOs of media companies. And one, they're blown away that Digital Wildcatters has built this community-centric media company and energy.
It's incredible.
It blows their mind that was even a thing.
Yeah.
But then you start talking about energy, and they're fascinated.
Yeah.
And all they needed was someone or some medium to be able to dive in and learn about it. And it's this whole new world that they're not exposed to. And so, getting in here and telling the stories of people in Houston and in manufacturing, I mean,
we should do it. Let's do it, man.
Let's do it. 100%.
You know what I love about the story you just said about media and energy and what you guys have done is that storytelling is very, very deeply human. We shared history we shared oral history before written history. So I think that's one of the things that makes podcasting so weirdly attractive to so many people, listeners, because it taps into that thing that we know how to do. We know how to share oral history.
Yeah.
And reading is actually, reading and everything else, obviously it's important, but that's actually a very clunky way to share information, like you and I. So let's say we try to replicate this conversation via an email exchange. First of all, we would have given up, a long time ago.
I'm a big believer in not having important conversations through text because there's so much nuance and context lost in that exchange. And so
so you need that. I think the media opportunity in sort of the industrial world that you and I know is so nascent, and you guys are one of the leaders there. But that's my hope for Manufacture Houston, that I just wanted to begin. You know, I knew it wouldn't be great, but I didn't worry about that.
As you should.
Yeah, like, just get it
started.
Yeah, because honestly, Colin, like, you know, we talked about innovation earlier. This is a great example of that. Like, I felt as though, let me just go first, get it out there, do it on Zoom, you know, and get 14 listeners or whatever we have.
Yeah.
But then that led to this conversation that we're having. Like, okay, then what else can we do?
It compounds over time.
But someone has to go first. Someone has to just go do something.
Yeah. A lot of people, you know, they'll see our podcast and they think that this is where you start off at. I've been putting out content for almost 9 years now.
Yes, which is very early. That's early. 9 years ago is early.
Yes.
Well, now is early, but
my claim to fame is that I created the first oil and gas meme that was out there on Vine.
You did?
Yeah. And it went viral. And
what was viral back then? Like 7 likes or something?
Yeah. It's like, I got 300 likes on this.
Right.
Went semi-viral.
Right. Half of them were people that you knew.
No, actually it did really well.
Yeah.
And anyways, so one, you know, recorded our first podcast in 2016.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't this show. Me and Jake had this whole, I don't even want to talk about it because it's cringe thinking about it. But
that's
like,
okay.
It takes a long time and you just get started and you reiterate over time. And it's like, even now, like, you know, I love this studio setup that we have, but now I'm like, think about something way better. Like, and you just, you get better production quality, better at interviewing. And so, I mean, like, I love that you just like, get started on Zoom.
Let's do it. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I think you also improve the quality of your guests. Like, you took a step backwards by having me on here, but
it's all right. You got to have some regression.
You do have a little regression. Like, I'm going to make the next guest look great.
I have this picture that I love this picture because we started actually our podcast in 2018 when this was still the can in this building.
Yeah.
We had an interior closet on the other side of the building.
You did.
And our podcast table was this dining room table from Jake's garage.
Oh, that's funny.
And then our lighting, we had this chair and we bought this floor lamp from Target to hang it over, like the most ghetto setup ever. And like had executives from like Schlumberger and like Dan Pickering, and I got like pictures of them. We're all sitting at this dining room table with like this.
That's funny.
You just get like
But I think that's the nature of the channel. I don't think it can be, especially early, it should not be overproduced.
No,
because
it can't.
It's going to be as real as you can make it.
People connect with genuine and authentic content, and I think that's actually one thing. Technical professionals, whether it's in energy or manufacturing, probably not probably, I know for a fact that they deal with this, that they don't want to look bad among their peers.
Right.
You know, they don't want to produce content that's like so basic of understanding that people are like, oh, this person's stupid. They can't talk about in-depth things. Or, you know, maybe it's funny if you ever go look at my TikTok, like I record TikToks off the cuff. Like I do it in one take.
Right.
And sometimes like I might like, I remember like this one video I did, like, what is a drill bit? It did, you know, 1.1 million views in a week.
That's
and
nuts. Yeah.
The reason I got the engagement is because like people are clowning on me in the comments and making the algorithm push it. Because I said the jets of the drill bit were like up in the drill bit. I said it
completely
weird.
wrong.
I said it weird. And like, it's not that I don't understand the subject matter. I just said it weird. And anyways, and so like I've actually found the hack to going viral on TikTok. It's like say something just a little bit off base, and people will come correct you in the comments, and it pushes the algorithm.
Right.
So
I have to admit, I've not done anything on TikTok. You and I talked about this when you were at our shop, and you know, our channel has been primarily LinkedIn.
Dude, y'all would fucking kill it on TikTok.
I think we would too, but I need your help though.
No,
I need your help doing all this,
dude.
Because I'm an old guy.
You know what TikTok? So this is the misconception about TikTok, is that everyone thinks that it's like these like just cringy dances and trends and shit, and it's not. There's this huge appetite for knowledge and learning
Oh, really? That's
And
interesting.
the content that does really well is like showing things, like building things. And that's what you guys do for a living
It is. Yeah, we
is
do
that
that.
you
People
build
pay us
things.
to do that.
I know. Yeah. I know that like, you could set up a camera. You guys got these huge industrial 3D printers that are cool as shit. Like you just set up your phone and show it doing that.
We should do that. I do think that I think there is an opportunity to do more of that within the world of manufacturing. And maybe we think about, I mean, we love the Alchemy stories, but I also want to really more so emphasize the Houston story of making stuff, so that person in New York or California or wherever, or India, they see someone here in Houston making something amazing, and that they say, well, gosh, I want to do that too. I can make my thing too. Why don't I come to Houston?
I think Houston is, I've lived in Houston for 8 or 9 years now, and absolutely love this city.
Yeah, me too.
One of the reasons, there's a couple reasons that I love it. One of the reasons is that I think that Houston has more opportunity than any city in the world.
I agree.
Currently,
Totally
I just
agree.
think that wherever you throw a stone, you can hit opportunity.
You can,
and
with very few people standing in your way, and I think more people willing to help. If you are, I've been here for longer than you have, since 1990, and my experience with Houston is that if you, and this, I know this is not completely true. I'm not that naive, but generally speaking, if you're a good person, you're hardworking, you're not a dick, and you try to do your best, you're gonna find people who are willing to help you in the city. And I remember when I showed up here, that was my experience. Like my first job was a reliability engineer in a chemical plant, working in Pasadena. Looking like me, talking like me. But my experience with the guys in the control rooms was that, as long as I was there with a good attitude, and because I didn't know anything, I was like an idiot baby engineer.
Yeah.
And but what I found was that if you showed up with the right attitude, people were willing to help.
Yeah.
Like that good old boy from Pasadena, he didn't care where I was
judged
from.
on work ethic, and
I think that's really true about
Yeah.
Houston. And I think that I hope that's always true about Houston. And one of the stories I love to tell, Colin, is that think about where we are as a city. We're a globally prominent city, leader, global leader in a lot of different ways: medicine, energy, manufacturing, and other things. And we didn't exist that long ago. Within 3 generations, this city has emerged from nothing almost.
Yeah.
And so how many globally prominent cities, and there's some amazing cities around the planet, can boast that in 3 generations they've reached that status? Look at London, Paris, New York, Beijing, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Houston did this on light speed. So
yeah,
there is something about this,
Yeah.
something about this place that allows that to happen. And so you fast forward in the next generation, people like you, that what can be produced out of this city? And I think it's
I've never thought about that. The timeline. That's super fascinating.
It's so fast. And it's like, and this shitty weather in July, and this there's mosquitoes and hurricanes, and all that stuff is 100% true.
Yeah.
All it's 100% true. However,
but also, the most diverse city in the United States, which leads to, in my opinion, the best food scene in the United States.
It's the best food city in America.
Oh, yeah, 100%, dude. And I'm so food driven. Dude, I lived up in the mountains as a kid in elementary school. Lived up in Mount Rainier in Washington State. I grew up in the forest. I know what it's like to have that stuff. Cool. I can get on a plane and go do that stuff, but at home, the people that we have here, I wanted to tell a story because one of my former business partners, he's from South Korea. The only 2 places that he's lived in the United States are Silicon Valley and New York City. Okay. And so, he's a hyper liberal guy, and he just, kind of got that asshole mentality. And he moved down here to Houston for something that we were building. And his comment was like, I cannot believe how helpful people in this city are.
Yeah.
He's like, people will just meet with me and are willing to help with nothing in return, and everyone's so friendly, and completely changed the way that this guy viewed the world.
Yeah, it is true, man. I mean, I think that's who we are here on balance. And in my 30 plus years living in this city, that's been my experience over and over and over again. Even when we launched Alchemy 2 years ago, and John, who I mentioned earlier, who was one of our co-founders, I've known him for about a decade, maybe longer. But so literally, it was a 4-slide PowerPoint deck, and I'm not kidding. It basically said, "Let's build shit here." That was kind of the thesis.
Yeah.
And I remember John's like, "Okay, Mush, what are we going to build?" I'm like, "Fuck if I know. I don't really know." but I know we should build stuff here, and we kind of had a general idea.
Yeah.
And since that time, we've really focused in on battery systems, power electronics.
I also I want to throw this out
Yeah.
there from last time that you and I talked about the podcast. Manufacturer Houston, but I
Yeah.
believe that it's MF Houston. And
Yes.
yeah, it's also doubles as motherfucking Houston.
Right. So I have to credit Justin Overstreet for coming up with that idea. I don't know if you know Justin, but he came up with the idea of MF Houston. So we'll tag a lot of our post MF Houston. That is the idea.
Yeah. I
It
love
is
it.
motherfucking Houston.
I love it.
I'll put-
We got-
my first idea was Houston, we make shit, but I thought, oh man, what if you emphasize the wrong word? Houston,
Yeah.
we make shit.
Yeah, we made shit. Yeah, yeah, it can be twisted.
Justin
yeah.
was like, no.
Yeah, we
Don't
gotta
do that.
We definitely got to make some merch and swag for
we
MF Houston,
definitely.
man.
MF
So,
Houston, yeah. Again,
Yeah.
credit Justin Overstreet. He's got Street Smart. I think it's Street Smart podcast, but
cool. Shout out to Justin.
Justin,
I don't
yeah, he
know
killed
him.
it.
I need to.
yeah,
I
you
need
should
to-
check Justin
need to
out.
meet
He's a
him and
really
talk to him.
good guy. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
on his podcast maybe 6 or 8 months ago, and
Cool.
he's really doing some great stuff. And so
Love
his
it.
his focus is on everyday entrepreneurs and
Yeah,
in and around the city. So
Yeah.
he's got really
very
great
cool.
things. So he's the
Yeah.
one that came up with MF Houston. But the
Nice.
merchandise opportunities on that,
Huge, dude.
Killer.
Huge. Yeah,
yeah,
We absolutely crush it on
that's
that.
right.
So,
yeah.
we're coming on the end of this podcast. I bet me and you could talk for
God,
hours,
yeah.
and probably will continue to do that
I'd love
in
to.
the future.
Yeah.
If someone wants to work with you guys, is interested
Yeah.
in, one, give your quick plug in here for the
Sure.
type of people that y'all
Yeah.
work with, and then where they can find you at.
Yeah, so where they can find us, look me up on LinkedIn. Mush
Yeah, this
Khan.
dude's putting out content like crazy on LinkedIn.
Well, I'm like
super
you,
good
like
content too.
my content, I don't really think about it, which is probably a problem. But I just post whatever I'm thinking about
Yes.
on that day.
It's a
and
stream. It's a stream of conscience.
all it is,
It's a stream
you know.
of conscience.
I kind of learned this lesson from what Gary Vee said about document, you know, and so that's literally all
That's
I'm
so
doing.
funny because I took that away from Gary Vee.
Yeah.
I think it's back in like 2016.
Really?
It was document, don't create.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like that's how I naturally. So you read my posts.
Yeah.
A lot of times my posts it's just a stream of consciousness going through my head.
Yeah.
It's like a diary entry for me. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm writing content and it's like for myself.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
other people might just resonate with that.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea that, my kids are young. If something happens, I leave this
That's
podcast,
it.
I get in a car wreck
Yeah.
and I die. My kids have something to go look back on.
Yeah.
And they'll listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And
History's a powerful thing.
yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely.
You've got to leave
And
trail
so,
notes, I think,
yeah.
behind you.
Which is funny because you talked about the origination of content. And like
Yeah.
my mind went to hieroglyphics and
Yeah.
how people told stories through like visuals
Yes,
and things of
yeah.
that nature.
No,
So,
that's right. I think that's very true. So LinkedIn is a place to connect with us. Well, so in terms of what Alchemy now really does, so the first 18 months of running the business, we kind of were in the wilderness on what we were going to make, and we really try to pay attention to market demand, and we're just now feeling where that demand is coming on for us. So we focus on batteries and power electronics and all the related systems that go into energy storage systems.
Mhm.
We're still babies in that business. We still will fuck it up sometimes. And,
Yeah.
But we're learning, and we've learned a lot, especially these last 6 months. We're beginning to win customers and working hard to do a good job for them. We don't always do a good job for them because it's that point that you and I talked about in an entrepreneur's journey where the business is starting to hit that acceleration point,
Mhm.
and your team is way overtaxed, and you're
Yeah.
so scared to add payroll too quickly because like you're going to run out of money, and and that's horrible. And
Yeah,
gives you stomach acid.
I made a comment earlier. I don't know if it was before we were recording, but all of us founders, like, it's all the same
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I literally had this conversation yesterday. I'm like, man, like, I know we need to make this higher, but I'm also trying to literally cut burn rate and
Yeah.
keep that capped, and you
Yeah.
deal with these things. And especially when you're not a heavily funded,
That's right.
Silicon Valley software company that's raised $100 million and you
It's
can
not
just go
that.
deploy capital. I mean,
No.
these are real challenges that you have
Yeah.
to
So
face and
we're
deal with.
excited though about some of the opportunities to add talent. We think we've got a strategic approach that we're working through right now. And we're still a baby company, a very small organization. I think by the end of this year we'll be, we'll probably quintuple in size, which don't be too impressed because the beginning number is not that big. But I think we'll hit probably a dozen plus engineers by the end of the year,
man.
and
which is a material step change from an operations perspective.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is, yeah.
We have 15 people now, and
Yeah.
we hit 12 people.
Yeah,
That's
things change.
Yeah, things change, and then you go from that to 30. That's probably
Right.
another milestone, and
Right.
so that's exciting, man.
It is.
That's awesome.
The type of engineers that we're looking for when we're beginning to hire are definitely mechanicals. We've got mechanicals on board. I'm a mechanical engineer, but they don't really let me engineer stuff.
You're not allowed to build anything.
Not allowed. Absolutely not. They kind of chase me out with a broom.
You just do the podcast.
That's
now.
it. Yeah, I'm like the outside guy. But and then we're hiring electronics, electrical engineers, software, firmware.
Cool.
People like that. So think about the way we think about this, and even though we're focused on energy storage systems, 50, 60 years ago, 100 years ago, products were mechanical in nature. And then 50 years ago, they became electromechanical. Now almost every product is electromechanical cyber in nature. And so the engineering skill set required to make modern day products is very, very different. And the engineers that you need, I think the primary skill set, if you're a baby engineer out there listening or you're about to graduate, what I would say is that the key skill to figure out is integration knowledge. How do you integrate multiple disciplines together to make something? Because none of this can be siloed. None of this can. So if you build a mechanical device and you haven't properly allocated for sensor space or the heat that comes from an electrical component or whatever, it's never going to work right. And so I think that's a critical skill, and it's one that we really look for.
That's the same thing that I've been preaching for the last 5 years in oil and gas. If you're an engineer, you're a geologist. It's like, hey, moving into a software world, a data world, you need to be multidisciplined because that's where you become valuable. If you're not just an SME in this one discipline, you are the one that can bring all of this knowledge together. And not saying that you have to know anything and everything about those individual disciplines. You can probably find other SMEs to rely on.
Right.
But being able to bring all of that together into an idea
that's critical.
Extremely critical.
The last thing I would say on that comment is that what I would add to that skill set would be a huge gap in the industrial market, which is user interface. So user interface is shitty in the industrial world. There is no user interface. There's no UX happening.
Yeah.
And very little design thinking, because engineers in school are taught to make a product with a desired function at the center of design, not the human that has to operate it.
Yeah.
But we don't have enough humans that know how to operate machines and make stuff. So I think the leading engineers of the future will have these people that can integrate knowledge, but also know how to think about UX, UI when it comes to complex machines.
Yeah.
Because that human becomes incredibly valuable. So this
this is very simple use case, but we're looking at potentially a new office, and I'm working with the architect, and they send me over a design in AutoCAD, and I don't know how to work AutoCAD. I'm not an engineer. I don't have access to it. And I'm like, there has to be a better software solution where I can take a floor plan, I can put in the elements. Hey, I need a 10 by 10 office. I need 5 of these. I need a conference room. And then I can use AI and have a nice user interface where I just click a button and boom. And that's and that's just a super low level engineering.
Well, so think about this. So think about Iron Man, the movie, and Jarvis. Jarvis is basically AR, VR. Visualization is incredible, etc. That's not exactly science fiction anymore. No. It's not science fiction. But what's really hard about that is how can you build those systems that integrate that knowledge together to where you have a great natural language interface, which is one of the reasons why I'm excited about Chat GPT.
Yeah.
And I've experimented with it. That's a UI UX opportunity, you know. So if you're, wouldn't we all love to say, you know, your version of job is someone to design this drill bit and here are the input conditions, and to speak naturally. We don't speak naturally to this massive of information that's available to us. And so we need engineers, I think, that can design those kinds of things. And
it's the language models and things around industry are super. I could go on forever about that, because I think that there is just this blue ocean of innovation that comes to that. I mean, you want to talk about like manufacturing, like we manufacture content using AI now. You know, I can go to Chat GPT and I can create an entire script for a piece of content, nuts? And it's crazy.
That's just version 3.
Well, you know what's funny is because I first learned about GPT on GPT-2 because someone built a bot on Twitter that took my tweets and like 9 other people's tweets as the inputs. And this bot would just tweet all day about energy, and it was fucking unbelievable. I did not believe that it was a bot, because there was so much nuance in contextual, like, you know, just jabs that it would take. And
it's revolutionary technology.
Every once in a while, you could tell when it was influenced by my tweets. You could see the frack slap, you know, kind of attitude come through its tweets, but it was just insane. And that really opened up my mind to what the possibilities were. But
well, I think the future of technology, we could go on for this. I think with this for a long time. I think you know, there's always sort of the fear of technology, as there should be. You know, there's always this sort of Promethean myth that people have. You know, they're afraid of fire, you should be afraid of fire. But on balance, I'm probably an optimist when it comes to this. But again, probably naively. So I think technology, good technology, should meet a few very important requirements, even in the industrial world. And I would argue that. So you and I are using great technology right now, and we're actually not even thinking about it. And it meets a few requirements, which is it disappears from our own experience, and it extends our capabilities as a human. So the shoe. Okay, so the shoe is a really advanced piece of technology. Makes us more human, not less human. And so I think good technology over the decades and years to come will be those things that make us more human. And I in my view, that's a great filter to look at sustainable long-term technology. What will make us more human? Even in the industrial world, what will make that person operating in the oil field or in a manufacturing plant or in a mine or wherever, make them more human? Those are the important things to work on. And so we think about how we're trying to build machines. That's a very important part of what we look at.
Have you ever read the book Shoe Dog?
Yes, Phil Knight's book.
Yes.
Incredible, isn't it?
Amazing. But killer book. You just brought up shoes, and it's hard for, you know, someone my age or your age we take shoes for granted. And you listen to that book, and I mean, tennis shoes weren't a thing.
They weren't a thing at all.
They weren't a thing. And so how visionary Phil Knight was to, you know, have this vision that everyone would wear tennis shoes, and it would just become something that enabled us to do more. And now we just take that, you know, for granted. It's just an extension of ourselves, but you remove that barrier of where we see it as a technological innovation. And so, not to get into this, but it's been what a lot of my beef has been with, like, blockchain applications. Is everyone focuses like, oh, it's a blockchain application. I'm like, no one gives a shit about the technology. No one. How are you making their life better and making an extension of themselves? So
that's why that's what we should be doing, all of us.
So super cool to hear how you think about that from a manufacturing perspective. So guys and girls, if you're listening to this show, and if you're a mechanical engineer, you say electrical engineers too, y'all.
Any variety of wizards.
If you're a smart person that wants to go do some really dope shit and build some stuff, go check these guys out. I've been out to their facility, super cool spot. You can tell from this show, I mean, you know, taking a visionary perspective on manufacturing. I love like boring industries and like, you know, how can we disrupt this? So super cool opportunity there. If you're a company that potentially needs to manufacture something, also reach out. We'll drop a link to, what is the website?
alchemyindustrial.com.
Cool. We'll drop a link to that. We'll also drop a link to the podcast. So if you guys want to go check out the podcast, hopefully soon, Digital Wildcatters will be helping out with that too as well. Be creating some content.
We should, man.
So
let's not
do
wait.
it, man.
Yep.
Let's make it happen.
Love
so, dude, appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you
is
for
awesome.
your time. This is great, and congrats on your success. I'm really happy for you.
Same to you, man. It's awesome to be surrounded by other people that are just building and making things happen. So, if y'all like this show, please leave us a review, share it with a friend. If you have friends in manufacturing, in the energy industry, people that are bullish on Houston, send this to them. That's helps us out a ton. That's how we grow the shows, by word of mouth. So catch y'all on the next episode.